And let's go live. We may be live now, then again, we may be not. The wonders of this. So, okay. Well, this will be nice to just kind of hang out, have a cup of coffee, relax a little bit. Cheers.
Today I am the minion of the month.
Oh, well, I got this from my son's girlfriend. I'm not quite sure what the message was, but I'll take it. So you know what? It's all good. Hey, well, we are definitely live, and let me go ahead and get my okay, we got to be sure that my volume's off. There we go. Okay, I think we're good. I think I'm frozen on Facebook, but that just might be me. Hey guys, is everything good out there? Send me a comment. Let me know that we're moving because I'm not moving on my own screen.
I don't have Facebook up.
So anyhow, welcome everybody. Hope everybody's had a good weekend. And you know, if somebody could let me know if we're broadcasting, that would be great. Just want to be sure that we're doing things right here. Okay, Bridget says all's okay. We know Bridget's watching out for us, so it's all good. So good morning, everybody. I'm Lisa, and this is Lori. Well, sideways. She's on one of the sides on your screen. And what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about fair housing and a few other things possibly.
Yes, a few other things, but let's talk fair housing first.
Yeah.
You know, because it's in the news a lot now. We have a lot more awareness.
Yes, a few other things.
Oh, geez, there's okay. Now I gotta stop that. There we go. Okay, all's well on my front. But you know, there's a lot of stuff in the news, a lot of awareness going on. You know, and there's some things that in our industry we need to be doing better. And one of the things we need to be sure that, you know, realtors and the public understand is, you know what, it's fair housing for all. And, you know, it's something that I don't think we talk about enough.
Absolutely. You know, having been an employer before I was a realtor, I was pretty familiar with the fair housing laws because they applied to both housing and employment. And so for me, it's something that has always been somewhat natural in knowing that there are a lot of differences. There's a lot of diversity, especially here in Southern California, and we need to respect all of our differences and all of the diversity. So I'll admit, you know, I have never committed the list to memory because for me, we're all humans, and that's what I strive to make sure that when I am out in the world and having conversations with people, that I look at the human experience. I know I'm not perfect though. I know I've messed up. I know that sometimes we don't know what we can say and what we shouldn't say. So a lot of times we just don't know. And so, you know, I was sharing with Lisa earlier that NAR has this video on their website now, and it's called Bias Override, Overcoming Barriers to Fair Housing. And I've seen it on the landing page for a couple weeks now, but I hadn't taken the time to click on it and watch it. I clicked on it, it was 53 minutes, and that time that I clicked on it, I just didn't have an hour to sit and listen to it. So I wanted to, you know, at least get it started so I would know what they were talking about in preparation for this session this morning. I didn't have the opportunity to watch the whole thing, but I've watched 15 minutes of it, and I'm really impressed so far. It's conducted, the video is put out by the Perception Institute, and it's a group that really looks at bias and mindset and all these different behaviors that sort of make up what we believe and what we do and what we say. And there were, I'll put the link to it in the Facebook notes afterward. But, you know, they reference, you know, sometimes in real estate, we learn what not to say, but we don't know what to say. And they talk about aligning your behavior with your values and the fact that we have these implicit biases for a variety of reasons. So it's definitely worth watching. I'm looking forward to watching the rest when we're done here. And they also have a test that you can take. And from what I understand from the description of the test, it's to test whether you do have some unconscious bias that maybe you don't realize you have. That's why it's unconscious. So I'm
I
excited
actually
about that.
took that test. And if it's the same test, it's freaky. It's a freaky test because they're showing you pictures and you're having to say which one's good, which one's bad, blah, blah, blah. And it's really eye-opening because, you know, you're just going on reflex and that's what it's testing if it's the same one. And I think it is. I think it is the same one. So definitely after we're done here, Lori will put that in the comments and I highly recommend listening to it because I think a lot of the problem is, you know, we know what the protected classes are, you know, pretty much, which is really hard for us like to list them all off because Lori and I are both sitting here confused because we have federally protected classes and then there's additional state protected classes. And some of these protected classes are quite obvious, you know, whether somebody's disabled, race, marital status, you know, that kind of stuff. But then California added a few like source of income that you can't discriminate against somebody by, you know, how they're getting their money to pay their rent. And there's also familiar status, you know, you can't say, you know, oh, I want to have my home be sold to a nice family to the exclusion of others. And also what constitutes a family. So there's a lot of things that you just need to be aware of out there, especially I think more so in the rental market. You know, you of course, you always need to be mindful and careful when you're in the sales market or the rental market, but the rental market, you really got to really watch out for because, you know, a lot of these protected classes aren't quite so obvious, you know, I mean, you can't say, oh, well, you're getting your income from this, you know, this source over here, and my landlord doesn't like that source. Well, that's really, if the person's getting the money's green at the end of the day, all of the money is going to be green and they're going to get their amount of money as long as it's a reliable source.
That's right. And you know, you mentioned that we were confused on the list. Where the confusion comes in is you will look to different sources and the lists are actually worded slightly different. And so, you know, you try to compare, you know, I've got a couple printed out here on my desk and you try to compare and they don't all align. They don't match up in the same order. And if it did, it would make it much easier. So I think, again, at the end of the day, we just need to understand that there are a lot of categories that we may not think about. And we should be treating everyone equally without having to worry, is this whatever on the category, you know, on the list or not? It shouldn't make a difference, but just understand that with California, because we are such a large population, which then results in a very diverse population as well, there are additional characteristics, there are additional categories that are on the list because of either perceived discrimination or actual discrimination. It's more noticeable because there are just so many different differences.
Exactly. And, you know, and sometimes we get ourselves into, I don't want to say we get ourselves into situations. We find ourselves in a situation that we have to try to figure out a way to gracefully handle it without being insulting, but not allowing the person to violate fair housing, such as, you know, we've had this conversation a few times, is when you find yourself at a listing appointment and, you know, I have this happen maybe once every couple of years. And the last time it was with the sweetest little lady, nicest woman in the world. And I was listing her condo when we're going through the paperwork. And she leans over and says, Lisa, I don't want to sell to any Black people or Mexicans because I can't do that to the neighbors. Now, when I brought this up to a group of agents in a discussion, a lot of pearl clutching went on with, oh, I hope that you got up and left and didn't take that listing. And I really didn't, after that, I was just like, God, how do I tell him I took the listing? Because I did take the listing. And I used that situation as an education moment for that client, letting her know, I'm sorry you feel that way. However, we cannot do that. And I used it to educate her about the fair housing laws and that all the money's green at the end of the day. It doesn't matter. But number one, you can't do that. It is against the law. And I think if I had done oh, I'm so insulted, I'm not taking this listing and leaving, she would have just kept going through agents until she found somebody who said, you're right, I'll do that for you. And then what are we doing? We're perpetuating the problem. So, if anybody has comments out there on, situations and how they've handled it, we'd love to hear about it because we can all, learn from sharing. But what would you do if you were in that position, Lori?
Well, I think you did the right thing. And initially it sounds shocking. Well, how could you do that? But the truth is you took the time to educate that client and get her to understand what she was doing was inappropriate and it wasn't necessary. Her goal was not to find a specific person to be in that house. Her goal was probably to, sell the house and move on with her life. And she shouldn't really be so concerned with what happens next. And so taking the time to educate her on number one, what you're doing is illegal. What you're asking me to do is illegal. And I cannot conduct any illegal activities. So normally I would say, yeah, I mean, you can't entertain that and you can't participate in it. But if you can first educate, that's huge. And especially with the rental market, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people don't understand because they still own that home. And so they feel that they do have the ability to make choices because it's still their home. But it's our jobs to make sure they understand that, look, now you have a product and your product needs to be able to be available to be sold to anybody and everyone who's interested. It's interesting when we look at a lot of the fair housing education out there, a lot of the, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of the, not discrimination training, but there's a lot of training on diversity. That's what I'm looking for, training on diversity. There's a lot of get to know what matters to that person, get to know their race, ask them what nationality are they, and find out what is important to that nationality. And we had a great conversation this weekend with a couple agents, and we keep being trained on go find out and learn about those cultures so that we can relate to them and we can understand what to expect. And what we're forgetting is that cultures evolve over time. And what's important to their grandparents are not necessarily important to the generation that is now, second and third born here in the United States. So to look at what historically a certain culture, how they conduct business is not really appropriate anymore because we're all looking for what matters to us. And that video, the 15 minutes I got to see on it, they had a comment on what they called individuation. And so we might think that a culture behaves a certain way, but we're forgetting we're all individuals and we all have this individual need and individual desire. And I was giving it some thought before I was watching that video. A really good example would be the differences between my sister and I. We are 4.5 years apart in age. We have the same parents. Genetically, we're very similar because we have the same parents. The way we were brought up is very similar because we have the same parents. We lived in the same household. Yet we make decisions very differently from each other. And why? It's because we have our own individual beliefs, our own individual values. Sure, a lot of it is rooted in how we were raised, but then it's also based on our experiences. And being in an age group where we were 4.5 years apart, we were not in high school at the same time. So I was in high school while she was in junior high school. different conversations go on at those levels and different stages of the world, from when I was in high school to then when she was in high school, and when I was in college to when she was in college. So we have all these different experiences that we're drawing from, and different circles of friends that we're interacting with, that we're learning from. So to be able to relate a specific culture across the board doesn't work. And even my husband, yeah, I mean, and my husband's from another country, and even within his own country, there are differences in how the people look from the north part of the country to the south part of the country. There are different ways they conduct business. There are different feelings of how they feel about working or doing business with someone of their own culture. There's a lot of nuances that we're not necessarily going to know and understand, and nor should we. And,
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and I say that only in the sense of the comment that one of our good friends, and I hope she's okay with me sharing this, but Janet Dorsey had the best answer to this. She said, you ask open-ended questions. You ask them, is there anything that I need to know about that will help me to help you? And that's it. Let's not pigeonhole them down a road of, is there anything with, your culture? Is there anything with how your family handles business? Is there any, no, just, is there anything that would help me to help you? And that's it. I thought
I agree completely. And, one of our other good friends, Farrah Wilder's on here, and she, commented when you were talking about this, saying, that the groups aren't treated as a monolith. And she said, I actually resent being treated stereotypically. And I didn't like this about NAR's at home with diversity training. And, that's something that a group of us has been discussing since a lot of us have been taking it. Some of us have already taken it. But, the program really needs to be updated because, it doesn't cover, dealing with second generation cultures and stuff like that. They're catering towards pigeonholing, which is exactly what we need to get out of, treating everybody as an individual and listening to their needs is the most important thing that we can do, and helping our clients, whether it be a listing and educating them, or taking your buyers and taking your possible tenants out and being sure that they're not going to be discriminated on and that they are treated as the individuals that they are. That's the most important thing that we can do. And being aware of actions that you're not subconsciously steering somebody, making assumptions about somebody just based on, how they present themselves. That's something that we really have to work on too, because, it's kind of interesting that what I said about that lady who made the comment to me at the listing, well, you wouldn't know by looking at me, but I'm mixed race. I'm half Mexican and half European. And, she basically saying, I don't want somebody like you in my home. And, it's like, you can't make assumptions. You don't know, you can't tell by looking at somebody what their race is, their culture, if they have a disability. People with mental health disabilities shouldn't have to come out and say, hi, I have a mental health disability. It's, unfortunately, we do so much of that in this business. And I think it's just being a little bit more aware of looking at everybody as an individual. And yeah, you do have subconscious bias that is going to come into play. And that's where that quiz, and if it's the same one, it's a pretty lengthy test. It really helps because it's like, whoa, I didn't know I was doing that. So, anything that we can do as an industry to bring awareness and realize, yeah, we're giving you this diversity training, but we're also making the problem maybe a little worse by doing so. And, just being open and listening and learning to the different groups out there that are having different struggles. Like, one of the things, and you and I were together in DC when we were at the diversity committee meeting, where they had somebody from Nagelrep talking. about the gay and lesbian community, and how lesbian couples will not go out and buy homes because they feel that they are going to be immediately discriminated upon. And I mean, that was heartbreaking to hear that. And, you know, people shouldn't feel that way. They really shouldn't. I don't know what we can do to fix this, but we got to find a way to fix it.
Well, I think the awareness is really the start. You know, I think that a lot of people do make assumptions. You know, you mentioned we wouldn't know you're half Mexican. Okay, I'm as white looking as white can be, right? I'm a quarter Mexican. Most people don't know that. And it shouldn't matter. And so I don't, you know, we don't proclaim to be the experts in diversity. We're not civil justice attorneys. Like, this is not our area of expertise, but it's important to have these conversations because there are a lot of things that have now come to our attention. And, you know, I don't want to go too far down the media hole, but, you know, all of a sudden, we're all hyper aware of all of the things that have been going on for decades that, you know, 10 years ago, for a TV show to do an episode depicting fill in the blank, for them to feel it was okay then, and for the last 10 years that it's been airing in reruns to feel it's okay, it's mind-boggling to me that suddenly today we all woke up and said that's wrong. And we should have realized it was wrong long ago. The problem is we didn't. And a lot of this continued on, and now we are more aware of it. And so the awareness is what matters. There's a lot of conversations going on about the language, the words we use in our language and in our advertising. And you know what? It's fascinating to just kind of stop and think and say, wow, I didn't interpret that way, but I guess some people do. And so just because I didn't interpret a word a certain way doesn't mean that others didn't. And that's part of the awareness. You know, I can decide to say I agree or I don't agree, but at the end of the day, the perception and the feeling that somebody has based on certain words or actions or whatever the case may be, we have to realize that we all have those different experiences, and we internalize the meaning of things different from each other. There was in that video, and again, I only watched 15 minutes, but I got half a page of notes on 15 minutes. One thing that they referenced on what we need to focus on is an acronym that is BRICK, B-R-I-C-K. So the B is for belonging, making sure that who we work with feels like they belong in this process and belong wherever they choose to live. And then the R was respect, respecting the differences, respecting the choices and the desires of individuals. The I was for investment and individuation, giving them that opportunity, you know, letting them choose what investment they want to make and how they as individuals want to fulfill their needs, fulfill their goals. And I'm probably not getting the exact definitions because I didn't write all the definitions down, but I think I'm summarizing it fair enough. C is conversation, having these conversations. And K is kindness. That's, at the end of the day, that's really everything. Just being kind to everybody.
And that can be a little difficult nowadays. Stay off of social media, except for here. We try to be kind here, but you know, yeah, it's definitely, you know, everybody needs to be treated as an individual. And I think that that's the most important thing is, you know, take a minute, get to know your clients, get to know your friends a little better too. You know, I've had some amazingly eye-opening conversations in the past couple of weeks that have just really, you know, have really stuck with me. And, you know, when I'm working with a new client, you know, I always have to work on subconscious bias, and I'm aware of that now, far more than I knew in the past, but now it's like hyper aware. You know, you can almost feel it kind of kick in, which I think is kind of interesting. But you know, we just need to kind of think a little bit more about, you know, treating everybody really as an individual, and understanding that, you know, everybody's life experience is certainly not like ours by any stretch. And, you know, it's nice to see conversations happening. Jeff Campbell put a note in here about the Texas removing master bedroom from the lexicon of, you know, in the MLS. And I know there's a lot of talk about things that, you know, in the past we may not have been, you know, aware of how that could be offensive to somebody. One of the things that I'm still freaking out about is the really, really old CCNRs from homes that were built in the 40s, maybe the 50s, that when you read them, and they specifically address the groups that are not going to be able to buy in there. And yes, that's not legal. You know, that part is void, but your client's gonna see that. And what a slap in the face. I mean, the first time I ran across it, I was just like, oh my God, what is this? I can't give this to my client, who happened to be one of the groups that was excluded from home ownership, you know. And I'm like, I think this is illegal, you know, because this is maybe about 15 years ago. But it's like something needs to be done about that. We, you know, I know David Silver Westrick, who's with us right now, he mentioned it on Facebook yesterday about something needs to be done about those CCNRs, whether they, you know, block it out so it's not seen, or something, because yeah, is it part of our history? Yes. Do we need our history thrown in our face constantly? Perhaps not, especially when it could really insult somebody.
Yeah, and I remember when you told me that story about those CCNRs and what was, you know, the initial shock of the fact that, wow, that really existed in a point in time, and for a long time in our country's history. But to not have anything in that file that addresses that, to update with the law, to me was just terrible, you know, because we can't erase what was, but we certainly know that legally it was addressed and the laws were updated, and yet to make no reference of that doesn't make sense. So I could completely understand, you know, if I were a client receiving it, I would be horrified. And I would probably be a little less horrified if there was then an amendment that said, and as of this date in history, you know, that is stricken and no longer legal. You know, that should have been done.
Yeah, maybe it has been. I don't know, because I don't sell a whole lot of property in Los Angeles County, which is where that property was located. You know, I'm down here where everything's shiny and new, built in the 80s. But I'm taking a listing in Paramount, and one thing I'm going to do right up front is get the CCNRs, because I'm sure they must have them as well, and see if there's anything offensive in there. And then, you know, I don't know, maybe that's something that can be addressed at an industry level, because it's really, you know, to sit there, you know, and thank God I read them, because I was kind of like, oh, look at this. They had CCNRs in 1947. Isn't this amazing? Which is what caused me to read it, because I wanted to see what could possibly be in there. And that's when I came across that. And I'm like, oh my God. And I told my client, I'm like, there's something in here that's really offensive. So I'm going to tell you that first. It does not apply to you because it's against the law. But I want you to know, I find this highly offensive, and I wish I didn't have to hand this to you, but I do. So, you know, I hope things have changed. I'm hoping that they have. If there's any title reps out there and in video land that can tell us, that would be great. In fact, I think I'll contact mine today and have a conversation with them. But that was just, you know, a horrible reminder of something that we really don't need to be reminded of.
Absolutely. Well, it's a good conversation. It's an important conversation. And I think the more that we talk about it to build awareness is a good reminder to each of us to give things more thought, to not be in your little bubble. And I'll admit I'm in a bubble, especially now with COVID. I'm really in a bubble.
Yeah, I'm in a bubble too. I think I'm the 8.5 on the COVID whack job level.
I'm not that. I'm just home. I'm like not. I don't have a phobia of it, but I have to tell you, and I'll share with all our friends here. So Friday, I ended up needing to go into the office because my community was doing some power line updates, and I had no electricity. And in case you didn't realize, because I always forget, no Wi-Fi when you have no electricity. So even though the batteries are all charged on the devices, there's no Wi-Fi. So I decided to work from the office. Lisa was having something going on at her house, so she came into the office too. And you know, it was just so normal to be there with you, because I was already there. When you walked in, we're like, hey, you sat down. We're, I don't know, 12 feet across.
Yeah, our office, we're at like the opposite ends of the office. So.
And we just, you know, talked business and talked as friends. And then I had a client appointment and you left. And I didn't get to tell you this. After you left, after I got off my client appointment, I thought, I haven't physically seen Lisa in over 3 months. And yet I see you all the time. And
yeah,
so
exactly.
it was weird because it didn't feel like, oh my God, we haven't seen each other. And yet the reality was, oh my God, we haven't seen
each other. Yeah. That, you know, that's interesting.
Like, we didn't even do any air hugs or anything. Like, because it's like, oh yeah.
Hi, see ya. Yeah, you know, I had my mask on when I walked in. We got to our separate corners, kind of like in a boxing ring. So we're nice and socially distanced. Yeah. But yeah, it really is an interesting world that we live in out there. And I'll kind of use this as a segue to discuss our other topic, which is stuff changes in best practices. Lori, talk to me about this.
Well, you know, I'm usually pretty on top of what's changed in terms of forms and best practices. And
we do not call you the compliance queen for nothing.
This one really slipped through because I didn't see it. And so thankfully, after our session last Monday, Roxanne, I forget her last name, Easton.
She may have you beat. I want you to know. She is going to be, you know, she may be the queen and you may be the princess.
I know. She was on it. She was on it. So we did have a little conversation about it in last week's post, but the BPPP changed and didn't notice, mostly because it wasn't on the COVID page where they've been, or CAR has been announcing changes. Didn't see any notification there. When you go into zip forms and you pull the PEAD, and if you just go to the COVID menu and hover over PEAD, the date was the same. You click on it, open it up. The PEAD was the most recent from June 2nd. But when you scroll down to that BPPP, it had changed. And there was no obvious way to know. So it did change. It went from 5 pages down to 2 pages. It's much simpler for the clients to read. It still comes attached to the other documents, the PEADs, but it is simpler. And so the way I read it, I think the way several others that I've had this conversation with is, it appears that the burden of preparing the property, providing the PPE, and keeping the property clean, it reads to me like that's shifted to the buyer's agent. And so
that's the way it's out there in the real world, it appears. And I don't know if any of you guys out here heard about this or know when it was announced or something. Put it in the comments so we know.
Well, it was as of June. It looks, if I remember right, it was June 19th that it changed, but I didn't see any announcements.
Well, and nothing was really discussed on the shift from listing agent to buyer's agent for PPP, if that actually happened. You know, the form is ambiguous, and which it was kind of funny because, you know, Lori sends me a message saying, hey, the PEAD form and the BPPP form changed. And I'm like, you know, I'm using it all the time. I've got a buyer that I can't find a darn house for. And I'm like, you know, pounding out these things on a daily basis. And it was like, well, how come you didn't know? And I'm like, how would I? You know, I'm looking for places to initial and just be sure it's attached. I don't count to see how many pages are there. You know, maybe if we had to initial the B triple P, I guess is the cool kids are calling it, maybe then I would have noticed something.
Yeah.
And I use the form daily and I had no idea that there was a change, but I noticed a shift in the MLS comments, which is you better bring your own gloves and you better bring your own mask and you better bring your own booties. And I'm like, well, what the heck happened here? And I did notice it primarily with one large brokerage. So I don't know whether they got the heads up or there was a shift or whatever. But it's like, okay, good thing I drive around with a bag of this stuff in my car.
Yeah, which is a good best practice. And I think we talked about this early on. Whose responsibility will it be? And, you know, both of us as former Girl Scouts, we take the responsibility on both sides. You know, we show up, if it's our listing, we prepare and we clean up. And if it's our buyer, we prepare and we clean up. So either way, we're going to do it so that we know it's been done. But yeah, the language I felt was ambiguous because in one part it says the buyer's agent needs to follow the listing agent's preventative plan. But then in another paragraph, it suggests that, well, the buyer's agent's the one that needs to provide the PPE.
Too many acronyms.
Yeah, and essentially clean up after their clients. So just a heads up, but I do recommend everybody read it just so you know what the most current one says, and you know, be on the lookout every couple of days. Just glance at the form and see if you notice it's been any different. Because, like I said, with this, it wasn't out there. You know, it wasn't on the COVID page, which has been a great resource for updated information. Even if you're just looking for dates, that's normally what I was looking at. Does anything have a date from this week? But I didn't see any other notifications. So we will continue to do our best to stay ahead of this information and let everybody know. But also, if anyone like Roxanne if she hadn't pointed that out, I wouldn't have noticed it. And so thank you, Roxanne, for that.
Yeah, because this is actually, when you think about it, this is a pretty major shift, you know, because if we're not talking about it, then nobody's cleaning. Then nobody's bringing things. You know,
I want to be clear though, like I'm not putting it out there that it definitively says the burden has shifted. It's my interpretation of it. And a few others that I spoke to, they read it the same way. So I don't want to mislead anyone in saying, well, everybody, the burden has shifted. It's no longer on the listing agent, because I don't believe that that's totally true. But I think the way they wrote it implies that.
Yeah, and I think, and basically, you know, my concern is who's cleaning.
Yeah.
I personally do not believe anybody's cleaning. Our market down here in South Orange County, for the price range for my one buyer, and all I can say is, thank God I only have one buyer right now, because if I had two, I'd be losing my mind, and I don't have much mind to lose. But the market is so hot down here in this, you know, your basic 500 to 800,000 price range, that it's like a revolving door at these listings, especially the vacant ones. And I showed probably 9 houses this weekend, and I think one agent was there at the property to be sure it was clean between showings. She had it spaced apart. She also was going to do a virtual open house. It was truly a virtual open house because she was locking the door. There were no signs up, and she had her iPad camera to go around and do what she needed to do. But we're seeing more and more of the not so virtual open houses out there. Maybe those ones will be clean though, maybe. But there was houses I was coming to that literally the appointments were scheduled 15 minutes apart for a listing that had been on the market less than 18 hours. And it was people in, people out, people in, people out. Nobody's there. Nobody's cleaning. Nobody knows what they're supposed to do. They say wear booties, but they're used booties. It's like, okay, am I wearing booties to keep your carpet clean or to protect everybody from sticky virus things?
And do you touch it with your bare hands or with your gloved hands? Either way, you're touching, if we're presuming there's gunk on shoes, well, now it's inside the booty and on the booty and on our hands. That's just gross.
No, I'm not touching anybody's used booty. The only used booty I'm touching is the one that comes off my shoe. That is it. But, and also too, here's the other thing that was funny is wear the booties or take off your shoes. Why do I want bare feet in a house? Why do I want my bare feet in a house? You know? I mean, we really need to start thinking if you're asking somebody to wear booties, number one, tell them either bring your own new booties or I will have new booties for you. And I hear the title companies have all like run out. I don't know, but you can buy them on Amazon, or just understand why you're asking for it. Is it for keep the floor clean or to keep the virus off of commingling? I don't think people are really thinking about why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, I have broker clients in a lot of areas, different counties, and everyone is essentially experiencing the same thing. Low inventory, huge demand, and everybody is having multiple offers. If it's their listing, multiple offers. If they're representing buyers, the competition is just nuts. So, it's a wonderful problem to have that in California, we're all experiencing this great market, but they're also experiencing the inconsistency of the showings and the preparations of the house. It's a challenge, it's one of those areas where we have best practices, guidelines, should be the standard of care, but we're reading language that's ambiguous. We are interpreting it differently. And so it's just a hodgepodge of whatever you feel like doing today. That's what's happening.
Yeah. And, and we have to be cognizant that this is not going away. COVID doesn't care if we're tired of it. COVID doesn't care if we want to do open houses. COVID doesn't care if we're, we need to understand if we're going to continue to work, we have to protect our clients. The numbers are going up and we have to protect ourselves. I mean, I'm freaked out about going to a grocery store, but I walked into 9 different houses this weekend. If I'm going to freak out, I should probably be freaking out over that. But, the numbers are going up and we have to protect our clients too. And, even if our clients don't feel that there's a threat, we have to kind of keep them out of harm's way because we really don't know what we're walking into. But I don't know.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we covered that topic.
I think we did. Anything else that you see out there?
No. Nope. Kind of covered it all.
Covered it all. Well, and also
just like a week, that's all.
Yeah, it's Monday. Who knows what's going to happen by tomorrow, right? But if anybody has anything to add to the conversation regarding fair housing, good resources to go to get better educated. I see that there's a very common thread in the chat here that some people aren't really loving a lot of the diversity training out there because it is kind of causing more stereotypes and people to let's see, it was pretty weird, full of stereotypes, meant well but landed with a thud. Wow. Well, you know what, David? I don't think I could have summed that course up any better than you. So, so just educate yourself, learn something new. In fact, I got a book that I can't start until I finish my appraisal course, right, Lori?
Right.
Yeah. And it's called The Color of Law. And it is a forgotten history of how our government segregated America. And it talks about redlining and steering and racial zoning and oh my gosh, it's just thing after thing after thing that we should know our history maybe we don't need it thrown in our face every day in the
When was that
CCNR.
book published? Because I feel it's been around a while, and so it'll be interesting. I haven't read it, so it'll be interesting to see how, if it's 20 years old and all of that is still happening.
Copyright 2017.
Really? I thought it was a much older book. It's not a reprint.
No, that's what it says, copyright.
Oh, I feel like I read that book years ago.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Well, I mean, considering now months feel like years,
well,
2017. That feels like a decade ago. God, we were actually like out and about with our friends and doing things. And
it was a decade ago. It was last decade.
Can we go back to that decade, please? I don't like this.
We were barely into this decade, and then everything happened.
Yeah, talk about a do-over. God, can we please have a do-over? Oh my gosh. But, I think if everybody just takes a little time and just educate yourself, open your eyes, pick up a book that maybe a friend of color could recommend you, because they may know what you might need to know because they know you. And that was pretty much how this one came about. And I have a couple of friends I want to thank, but they know who they are. It's all good. But that's the best thing we can do, is to educate ourselves and to understand that you can't tell a book by its cover. Basically, says our Latinx contingency here, which I happen to have a red-headed 1/4 Mexican son. So, I think that's kind of a common thing running around there. I'm not sure about this redhead business,
I'm the redhead of 4 kids, though.
Well, yeah, he was the only redhead out of 2, but it's an interesting thing. And, and Jeff Campbell also posts up in here, one of the best courses I took was a Feng Shui real estate course, taught most respectfully honoring cultural desires in the real estate world. And honestly, if I was going to do anything, I would definitely educate yourself, get a basic understanding of Feng Shui. It is something you can use in real estate that is just so good to know. And I have to say, my first client that was really super, super, super into Feng Shui, like they had the mirrors outside the house, so the bad energy would reflect off and go places. And, she had everything in the house all set up exactly like how it was supposed to be for Feng Shui. And she was Swedish. So, you can't make these assumptions, because she taught me probably more about Feng Shui than I did from a course, but it's just some good stuff to know, that you can, just being cognizant of, a staircase opening to a front door, or the house being at the T of a street. It's good just to know that this, a lot of this stuff isn't good juju for anybody. So just, if you haven't done it, you should do it. And if I see a Feng Shui course somewhere, I'll post it in the group, because it's good to know. And I know that it caused some placement changes of furniture and plants in one of my homes. So all the energy, all my money didn't fly out of my house. So I gotta say, I do some of that myself. So
it's fascinating to learn.
Oh, it is. It is.
What people how they perceive certain things and interpret certain things, and there's a lot of truth to it. One of the homes that we owned had everything wrong with it based on Feng Shui, but you know what? That was one of my favorite homes to live in, and I really enjoyed living there. I enjoyed the life that we had there, and miss it. But yet, I mean, we were at the T on the street. We had the front door open to the stairs and the back door, the patio door, all of it in a line. Yeah, it was all wrong.
All that money and all that good energy just flew right out of your house. Did you put a plant there to stop it? Because you can mitigate some of that.
I mean, we bought that house before I really knew anything about Feng Shui, so I didn't realize when we bought it. We did have 2 minor accidents, like move-in weekend, where I almost got killed twice, but I survived. So But other than that, everything else was great. It's just that weekend. I was just like, there's a ghost in here that's haunting me and doesn't want me here. And after that weekend, everything was fine. So that's right.
Yeah, we should have a talk about haunted houses one of these days. Hey, if anybody thinks that's a good idea, put it in the comments.
Yeah, we do need ideas for next week. I mean, unless something happens that we can pull from, you know, we're going to be looking for some content to chat about next week.
Yeah, because we want to help you guys. We want, you know, hey.
It helps us too.
And you know what? We hit 500 members this week.
Awesome.
500. Yay. So tell a friend, come join us. And if there's something like Carol Lynch said that she wanted to say something, but unfortunately in this format, you can't really talk. It's only, well, it's only Lori and I talking. But you can put it in the comments. And if, you know, I don't know where she went, but put it in the comments, Carol, so we can see what it is that you had to say. And, you know, we'll talk about what it is that you guys are seeing. If some, do you think we're going to have a week where something's not going to happen?
Probably not.
Probably not. But we still have time to talk, time to chat. And I so appreciate everybody being here. And I hope that you guys find it valuable, because I always love hearing what the compliance queen, my business partner, Lori, has to say. And I hope you guys do too. So.
And thanks everybody for your contributions to the comments. You know, that helps, that really adds depth to the conversation, and it helps us understand the experiences that everyone are going through, you know, across the area. Because Lisa and I are in relatively the same geographical area, so you know, we see what we see, and we rely on others to let us know what's going on in the surrounding areas and contribute.
Roxanne joined us.
Yay!
Roxanne, I don't know, are you guys gonna be co-compliance queens, or I don't know, maybe just princesses? Well, Roxanne, since you got here a little bit late, you're going to need to kind of go back here and hear what we were saying about you. Maybe your ears were burning.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's
is
on top of it, and someone that I have a lot of respect for as well, because she's like me. She's a nerd when it comes to the compliance aspect of it, and is always looking to help educate everybody, keep them informed. You know, that's the most important thing, is just trying to keep everybody informed so we're all on the same page. You know, I certainly don't have all of the answers, but I usually know where to look, and I can usually anticipate why there'd be a lawsuit out of something. So, you know, we do the best we can to just share information and help keep everybody on their toes.
Exactly. And we had such a great group of people. When I saw the names popping up, it's like, wow, this is, you know, just the people in this group are like the cream of the crop. We got some just great people in here. And if anybody has anything they want to share at any time, there's some tools that are new to Facebook, like the messenger rooms and stuff. Maybe we might consider doing little breakout sessions after one of our talks or something like that. So if you guys have ideas, throw them at us. You know, this is just like a giant petri dish of real estate stuff here. So, you know, anything you guys want to talk about, let us know and we'll bring it up. So until next Monday, my dear.
Have a great
week. For the week. Talk to you guys soon. Have fun. Go sell a house. Bye.